What happens when one of music's most beloved legends walks onto a daytime talk show, expecting warmth, respect, and an easy conversation, only to be blindsided by a host who seems determined to drag him down? It took 42 seconds. 42 seconds from Denise Welch's very first question for everything to fall apart, turning what should have been a celebratory interview into one of the most uncomfortable, bewildering car crash moments in British daytime TV history. This is the story of how Sir Elton John, the man who has conquered stadiums, topped charts for decades, and become a cultural icon across generations, suddenly found himself in a battle he never signed up for, one ignited by a host whose behavior no one in the studio, not even her fellow panelists, could believe. The Loose Women studio had its usual pre-show buzz, warm lights, audience chatter, the familiar hum of producers calling cues. Everything was set. Today's guest was a dream, booking an automatic ratings win. Elton John. A knight. A legend. A man whose very presence softens a room. It was supposed to be a feel-good segment. The kind of interview that lets the audience relax, laugh, and enjoy a national treasure talking about his charity work and new projects. Simple, easy, safe. Denise Welch was in the anchor seat, flanked by Ruth Langsford, Janet Street Porter, and Kay Adams. They had their cards ready, their smiles set, their tone upbeat as the theme music played and the cameras rolled live. "Welcome back to Loose Women," Denise beamed into the camera. "And today, we have a very special guest, a musical legend, a knight of the realm, and the man behind some of the most iconic songs ever written. Please welcome the one and only Sir Elton John." The audience exploded in applause. Elton strolled out, looking every bit the icon's sharp suit, flamboyant glasses, a warm smile that made everyone in the room sit up a little straighter. He waved, he shook hands, he sat down with that easy, familiar charm. "Thank you so much for being here," Ruth said, glowing. "My pleasure," Elton replied. "Always nice to be back on British television." The first minute was smooth. Pleasant small talk. Kay asked about his flight. Janet reminisced about a performance. The audience relaxed. The panelists relaxed. And then Denise took over, and the temperature in the room dropped. "So, Elton," she began, leaning in, not curious, confrontational. "Let's talk about your career. You've been in the music industry for what, over 50 years now?" "That's right," Elton said with a polite smile, though a flicker of caution flashed across his face. "Quite a journey indeed," Denise said, her tone sharp enough to make Ruth and Janet exchange uneasy glances. And then she delivered the line that turned the studio ice cold. "But don't you think, at your age, it might be time to step aside and let younger artists have their moment? I mean, how long can you really keep going?" The audience froze. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Elton's smile vanished. "I'm sorry, what?" he asked. Stunned. "Well, you're not exactly a spring chicken anymore," Denise pressed on, as if unaware of, or uninterested, in the shock spreading across the table. "Hasn't the music industry moved on? Your style is very dated, isn't it?" Ruth jumped in immediately. "I don't think that's fair at all. Elton's music is timeless. His recent tours sold out stadiums around the world." "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Denise snapped, brushing Ruth off. "Look at the charts. It's all young people making music for young people. Where does someone like Elton fit into that?" Elton straightened in his chair, the warmth gone, replaced by something cooler, sharper. "Someone like me?" he repeated, his voice calm but edged with steel. "What exactly do you mean by that?" "You know what I mean," Denise said with a dismissive shrug. "You're from a different era. Maybe your time in the spotlight has passed." Kay Adams jumped in like she was grabbing a fire extinguisher. "Elton, your charity work has been extraordinary. The Elton John AIDS Foundation has raised millions. Can we talk about that?" "Thank you," Elton said, seizing the lifeline. "Yes, the foundation is one of the most important parts of my life. We've been able to fund research, provide support, and genuinely change lives." But Denise wasn't done. "But isn't it true," she cut in, "that some people have criticized the foundation? There've been questions about where the money actually goes, haven't there?" Elton's face flushed. The sting was instant and visible. "Excuse me," he said slowly. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Denise said with a syrupy innocence that fooled no one. I'm just asking the questions people want answered. There have been articles, haven't there? Concerns about transparency? That is absolutely not true. Elton shot back, his patience thinning by the second. The foundation is completely transparent. Every penny is accounted for. We publish detailed financial reports every single year. This, he gestured at her, is an outrageous accusation. Ruth leaned forward immediately, desperate to grab the steering wheel back. Denise, let's move on. Elton, your husband David, how is he? And your children? They must be growing so fast. Elton's expression softened just slightly as he exhaled. They're wonderful, thank you. Being a father has been the greatest joy of my life. My boys are everything to me. Must be hard though, Denise cut in, faux sympathy dripping from every syllable. Raising children at your age? What are you now, 70-something? Will you even be around to see them graduate? It's a bit selfish, isn't it, having kids when you're so old? The gasp from the audience was immediate, sharp, and collective. Ruth's hand flew to her mouth. Janet actually blurted, "Oh my God." Kay shrank in her chair, as if trying to fold herself out of existence. Even the camera crew froze, exchanging horrified looks behind the lenses. Elton stared at Denise long, hard, and stunned. "Did you actually just say that to me?" he asked. His voice low and dangerous. "I'm just being honest," Denise replied with a shrug, as casually as if commenting on the weather. "It's what people think. Having children in your 60s isn't conventional. Those poor boys will probably lose their father while they're still young. That is completely out of line," Janet snapped, finally unable to stay silent. "Denise, you can't say things like that." "Why not?" Denise fired back. "We're supposed to have honest conversations on this show, aren't we? Or are we only allowed to ask soft, fluffy questions when a celebrity's here?" That was it. Elton stood abruptly, ripping off his microphone. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this," he said, voice trembling not with fear, but with fury. "I came here expecting a respectful conversation. Instead, I've been ambushed with baseless accusations and disgusting personal insults." "Oh, sit down," Denise scoffed with a dismissive wave. "You're being oversensitive. Can't handle a little honest criticism?" "Honest criticism?" Elton repeated, stunned. "You questioned my relevance. You smeared my charity work with lies. And then you called me selfish for having children. That's not criticism, that's cruelty." Ruth stood as well, reaching for him. "Elton, please don't leave. We're so sorry. This is not how today was meant to go." "You're right," Elton said, looking at Ruth with real sympathy. "And I feel for you for all of you having to sit next to someone who thinks this is acceptable behavior." Denise rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please, you celebrities are all the same. You want worship, you want protection, and the moment someone asks a difficult question, you cry foul. Well, sorry, that's not how real journalism works." "Real journalism?" Janet barked out a humorless laugh. "This isn't journalism, Denise. This is you being nasty for sport." "I'm being real," Denise insisted, chin high. "Someone has to be." Kay finally spoke, voice soft but unwavering. "Elton, you have our sincere apologies. This was completely inappropriate." "I appreciate that, Kay," Elton said, calmer now but resolute. "But I won't be disrespected, not like this, not by anyone." He turned to leave. "What, you're just walking out?" Denise scoffed. "Can't handle the heat." Elton stopped, turned, looked directly at her. "No, Denise. I can handle plenty," he said. "What I won't handle is a host who confuses cruelty with courage. There's a difference between holding someone accountable and tearing them down for sport. And you've crossed that line again and again." "I think you're being dramatic," Denise muttered, arms folded. "All I did was ask questions." "You questioned my right to be a father," Elton shot back, voice ringing through the studio. "You implied my children would be better off without me. You attacked decades of life-saving work with accusations that have no basis in reality. Those aren't questions, those are attacks." Ruth stepped between them, protective and ashamed. "Elton, you're absolutely right. I'm mortified by what's happened." "As am I," Janet added. "This is not what Loose Women stands for." "Oh, so now you're all turning on me," Denise snapped. Typical. The moment someone dares to tell the truth, everyone else jumps to protect the celebrity. "Speaking your mind is one thing," Kay said gently, "but being cruel is another." "And you were cruel, Denise?" "I was honest," she insisted. "No," Elton said, his voice cutting clean through the air, silencing the entire room. "You were hurtful, and honesty without compassion is just cruelty dressed up in different clothes." The applause started tentatively, one pair of hands, then another, before swelling into a full, rolling ovation that made it unmistakably clear where the room's loyalties lay. Elton dipped his head in quiet gratitude, then turned back to the panel. "Ruth, Janet, Kay," he said warmly, "it was lovely meeting you all. I'm sorry our time together was overshadowed by all of this." He faced Denise one final time, his expression calm but unshakably firm. "And as for you, I sincerely hope you reflect on the way you treat people. Fame doesn't make anyone immune to basic decency. And having a platform doesn't give you the right to tear others down for sport." "I don't need a lecture from you," Denise snapped. "Clearly, you do," Janet murmured, just loud enough for her microphone to catch it. Elton exhaled, the disappointment in his eyes almost heavier than his anger. "You know what the real tragedy is? I came here to talk about work that saves lives. Our foundation has helped millions funding groundbreaking research, offering care and support to communities in desperate need, fighting stigma every single day. That's what I hope to share with your audience. Instead, I've spent the last several minutes defending myself against cruelty and fabrications. If you had just answered the questions," Denise began, but Ruth cut sharply across her. "Stop it, Denise, just stop, you've done enough damage today." From off-camera, a producer's frantic voice could be heard, urgent whispers, scrambling to salvage what was quickly becoming a live broadcast disaster. The audience murmured, many calling out encouragement to Elton, others expressing frustration at what they'd witnessed. He took a long, steadying breath. "I've been in this industry for over 5 decades, he said. "I've faced criticism, controversy, and every kind of headline. But one thing I've learned is that you never have to tolerate disrespect. Not from anyone, not on any platform." "Bravo," someone shouted. Applause erupted again, louder this time, energized, defiant. Denise glanced around, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features, as she realized the room had entirely shifted against her. "This is ridiculous," she insisted. "I was just doing my job." "Your job is to interview guests," Janet shot back. "Not to humiliate them?" Kay nodded, her voice steady but firm. "Elton has been gracious since he walked onto this set. He didn't deserve any of what just happened." "Thank you," Elton said sincerely. "To both of you." He turned to the audience. "And thank you, your support means more than you know." A new wave of applause rose, bigger than before. One by one, the audience stood until the entire studio was on its feet, giving Elton a full standing ovation. Denise remained seated, her expression stiff with equal parts defiance and dawning realization. "You're all being dramatic," she muttered, but her voice trembled ever so slightly. "No, Denise," Ruth said with a quiet conviction that cut through the noise. "For once, we're being exactly what we should be, decent human beings who recognize when someone has been treated horribly." Elton picked up his jacket, draping it over his arm with an air of quiet finality. "I wish you all the best," he told the panel, pointedly leaving out Denise. "And to everyone watching at home, please continue to support AIDS research and awareness. The fight isn't over, and every contribution matters." Even now, even as he prepared to walk away, he used his platform for the cause he cared most about. The audience roared their approval. As Elton walked toward the exit, Denise blurted out one last attempt at the final word. "Oh, so you're running away? Can't handle a real conversation?" Elton paused at the edge of the set, and turned back, his final words calm, devastating, unanswerable. "Denise, I've had more real conversations in my life than you can imagine. I've spoken with world leaders about policy, doctors about medical breakthroughs, families devastated by loss. I've had conversations that were difficult, painful, and important, conversations that mattered. What I won't do is waste my time with someone who mistakes cruelty for courage and believes being provocative is the same as being profound." The studio erupted cheers, applause, shouts of agreement. Some booed Denise. The air was electric with emotion and justice. Ruth's eyes glistened. Elton, I am so sorry. Please know this isn't who we are. I believe you, Elton said, softening. Truly. I can tell you, and the others were put in an impossible position today. Janet rose and stepped toward him, extending her hand. It's been an honor even under these circumstances. Your dignity in the face of all this nonsense has been remarkable. Elton clasped Janet's hand warmly. Thank you, Janet, truly. That means a great deal. Kay rose and stepped beside them. We'll do better. We have to do better. I hope you will, Elton said, his tone gentle but firm. Because platforms like this shows that reach millions, they matter. What you say, how you treat people, it all leaves an imprint. Please use that responsibility wisely. Denise finally stood as well. But instead of contrition, she doubled down. I still don't think I did anything wrong, she said briskly. I asked legitimate questions. Legitimate questions? Elton repeated, his voice rising, incredulous. You told me I was too old to be relevant. You accused me of exploiting my charity work. You implied my children would be better off if I hadn't been their father. In what universe are those legitimate questions? They're things people wonder, Denise snapped. No, Janet cut in. They're things you wonder. Don't pretend you're speaking for anyone but yourself. The producer's voice crackled through the speakers again, frantic now, begging for a commercial break, anything to stop the meltdown, but the cameras kept rolling, capturing every raw second. Elton shook his head with a sad, almost weary smile. You know what, Denise? I actually feel sorry for you. Somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself that being harsh makes you a better interviewer. But all it's done is make you someone people will remember for all the wrong reasons. The audience murmured, nodding. Denise's jaw tightened. When people look back at this, Elton continued, they won't see you as brave or tough. They'll see someone who was cruel to a guest, who came here in good faith. I don't care what people think, Denise insisted, though the faint quiver in her voice told another story. That right there, Kay said quietly, is the problem. You should care. We all should. Elton scanned the room. The audience was still on their feet, applauding him. The panel was split, 3 women embarrassed, one stubbornly refusing to back down. Crew members stood frozen, no longer pretending to adjust lights or clipboards. I've been blessed with an extraordinary career, Elton said, his voice echoing through the studio. I've played for royalty and for small clubs. I've won awards, broken records. But what I'm most proud of is trying to treat people with kindness. I haven't always succeeded. I'm human, but I've tried. And that's all any of us can do, try to be better, try to be kinder. Try to lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. The applause swelled louder, longer. A few audience members wiped away tears. That's all very sweet, Denise said with a roll of her eyes. But we're journalists, not cheerleaders. There's a difference between journalism and antagonism, Ruth snapped. And you crossed that line today repeatedly. Elton took a step toward the exit but paused, turning back to address the cameras directly. To anyone watching at home who feels marginalized or dismissed because of who you are, how old you are, or any part of your identity, please hear me. You matter. Your worth is not dictated by anyone else's opinion. Live your truth. Love who you love. Don't let anyone convince you you're less than you are. A wave of emotion rippled through the audience, shouts of, thank you, rising from every direction. Denise scoffed. Now he's giving a speech. Ridiculous. What's ridiculous, Janet replied coldly, is that you still don't understand what you did wrong. That's the frightening part. Elton gave Janet a grateful smile. Thank you for standing up for what's right. That takes courage. It shouldn't require courage, Janet said. It should just be normal. Kay nodded. Our viewers deserve better. Our guests deserve better. We deserve better. Speak for yourselves, Denise muttered, but even she knew the tide had turned. She was alone. The producer finally burst onto the set, whisper shouting orders. Crew members scrambled, but it was too late, the show was shattered. Elton used the chaos as his moment. Ladies, he said with a gracious nod, this has certainly been memorable. And with that, he walked off the set to another surge of applause. I wish you all well. Elton's eyes swept across the panel deliberately, unmistakably skipping over Denise. The message landed harder than any raised voice could. As he walked off the set, the audience rose once more, giving him a final, thunderous standing ovation. The applause followed him down the hallway, echoing like a verdict. Ruth and Janet clapped with genuine admiration. Kay blinked rapidly, trying to keep her composure. Only Denise remained motionless, arms folded, jaw clenched, expression carved from stone. The instant Elton disappeared, the studio detonated into chaos. Audience members erupted into loud, overlapping conversations, some stunned, some furious, all of them buzzing with the electricity of witnessing something raw and unfiltered. Meanwhile, on the panel, the remaining hosts turned on Denise like a wave cresting at once. That was completely uncalled for, Ruth snapped, her voice trembling with barely contained outrage. How could you treat a guest like that? He's a public figure, Denise shot back. He should be able to handle tough questions. Tough questions? Kay barked. Those weren't tough questions. Those were personal attacks dressed up as journalism. There's a massive difference. Janet leaned in, fury simmering beneath her controlled tone. You questioned his right to be a father, Denise. His right to have children because of his age. That's not journalism, that's cruelty. I was being provocative, Denise insisted. Provocative gets people talking. Oh, people will talk, Ruth said coldly. But not the way you think. They'll be talking about how one of the world's most beloved musicians was humiliated on our show. The producer's voice crackled overhead again. They were cutting to an early commercial break. The damage, however, was already irreversible. Cameras shut off. But the audience didn't need cameras anymore. Phones were out. Posts were already going up. The explosion was happening in real time. In the studio, the immediate fallout was a swirl of shock, embarrassment, and disbelief. Crew members packed equipment with dazed expressions, half shaken, half exhilarated at having witnessed something that would be replayed for decades. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Elton John was almost certainly regrouping with his team, shaking off the adrenaline, preparing to leave the building and put the spectacle behind him. He had walked in, expecting to talk about charity, music, joy, and ended up defending his relevance as an artist and his worth as a father. The interview had lasted under 15 minutes, but it would be remembered for years as one of the most stunning implosions in British talk show history. Not because of scandal, not because of revelation, but because a friendly conversation had turned hostile in the blink of an eye, and the entire nation had watched a single host's lack of basic respect create a catastrophic moment of television. The studio audience was slowly ushered out, still buzzing. Some were angry. Some heartbroken. Most were fiercely protective of Elton. A few asked aloud how something like this could happen on a show marketed as warm, breezy, welcoming. Back on the set, the confrontation raged on. Ruth was livid, her professionalism cracked in half. Janet was icy, surgical in her dismantling of Denise's excuses. Kay hovered between heartbreak and fury. Do you have any idea what you've done? Ruth demanded. Do you understand the damage? I did my job, Denise insisted, doubling down. I asked questions. You attacked a guest, Janet said sharply. That's not the same thing. And if you can't see that, then that's a very big problem. Around them, the crew finished packing up. Producers were already scrambling into emergency meetings. Executives were scrambling for statements. Headlines were practically writing themselves. The truth was undeniable. Elton John had come to the show expecting nothing more than a light, friendly conversation. Instead, he'd been forced to defend the most personal parts of his life. And even then, even in the face of unprovoked hostility, he'd walked away with grace, restraint, and dignity. The confrontation revealed something deeper than a single bad interview. It exposed the line between accountability and cruelty. It reminded viewers everywhere that fame doesn't erase the need for basic respect. And it demonstrated how powerful it can be to simply walk away rather than escalate. As the last audience members filtered out and the studio lights dimmed, the air still vibrated with what had happened. Everyone who had been present knew they'd witnessed a moment that would become television history. And somewhere outside the building, Elton John was likely already moving on with his day head high, dignity intact, secure in the knowledge that the public's sympathy was firmly, overwhelmingly with him. He had defended his family, his work, and his worth without ever lowering himself to the level of the person who had attacked him. He had shown, in front of millions, exactly how to respond when someone crosses the line. The incident would become a teaching moment whether Denise wanted it to be or not. It would spark discussions about ethics, respect, and the difference between hard journalism and calculated cruelty. It would be debated endlessly online, but its essence was simple. One person chose unnecessary cruelty. The other chose dignity. And when Elton John walked away from that toxic situation, he proved that grace can be louder than any outburst. The show would limp on without him that day, scrambling to fill the empty space he left behind. The panelists would continue, shaken and subdued. Denise would cling to her belief that she'd done nothing wrong, at least publicly. Privately, she might begin to understand. And the audience, both in studio and across the internet, would remember this day forever. The day Elton John was pushed too far by a host who thought provocation made good television, and responded with a quiet strength that was far more powerful than any angry outburst could ever be.